All right. Today, we're diving into a very serious and complex legal topic, Arizona's law on sexual conduct with a minor, also known as ARS 13-1405. Because the consequences here are so incredibly high, really understanding how this law is written is absolutely critical. So let's get into it.
But first, before we go even one step further, this part is incredibly important, so I'm just going to read it directly. Remember, this information is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for legal advice from an experienced Arizona criminal defense lawyer. If you are charged with sexual conduct with a minor, consult with a qualified Arizona sex crimes attorney as soon as possible. Seriously, that is the single most important piece of advice in this entire breakdown.
So, to make sense of all this, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basic definition of the law, then we'll break down the specific legal terms. After that, we'll get into the penalties, answer some common questions, and wrap it all up with the key takeaways. This should give us a really clear picture.
Okay, Section 1. Let's start right at the foundation. What does this law actually say? What is the core definition of the offense?
And there it is. This single sentence is the bedrock of the entire law. And you better believe every single word here matters. Intentionally, knowingly, sexual intercourse, oral sexual contact, and of course, under 18. Each of these has a precise legal meaning that completely shapes how a case is handled. Let's dig into what those words really mean. Right, Section 2. To really get what this law is about, you have to speak its language. So let's decode some of these key legal terms.
First up, what's going on in a person's head? Intentionally is pretty straightforward. It means the act was your goal. Knowingly is a bit broader. It means you are aware of what you were doing, even if you had no idea you were breaking the law. And that's a huge point. Saying, I didn't know it was illegal just doesn't work as a defense here.
Next up, the acts themselves. You'll notice the language is written to be incredibly broad, but also super specific. It's designed to cover just about any scenario, from penetration to specific kinds of touching and oral contact. They really tried to leave very little room for interpretation. Now, this concept right here can completely change a case. A position of trust. We're talking about someone who has authority or influence over a minor, a family member, a teacher, a coach. As we're about to see, if the accused person holds one of these positions, the penalties get a whole lot more severe. Okay, now we move on to the consequences, Section 3. And I really can't overstate the gravity of this. We are talking about life-altering penalties. As you can see how serious the charge is, the felony class, pretty much comes down to two things: the age of the victim, and any other specific factors. The baseline offense, say with a 16-year-old, is a Class 6 felony. But if the victim is under 15, it immediately skyrockets to a Class 2 felony. And at the very top, a Class 1 felony, well, that carries the heaviest sentence possible in Arizona. And this is it, natural life. This sentence is reserved for the absolute most severe cases under this law. It means prison for life with no chance of ever getting out. And even when a sentence is life without the word natural, it comes with a mandatory minimum, and that number is 35 years. A person has to serve every single day of that sentence before they can even be considered for any type of release. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it puts everything together in one place. This table gives you a crystal clear visual of how the sentencing works. Just look at that first column, the victim's age. As you move down, you can track right across to see how the felony class and the prison time change. It's honestly stunning. The difference between a victim being 14 versus 15 can be the difference between more than 20 years and less than 4. And just so there is absolutely zero doubt about what natural life means, let's read the definition straight from the source. Natural life means you will remain in prison until you die, with absolutely no possibility of commutation, parole, work furlough, work release, or release from confinement for any reason. The finality there is just absolute. You know, it's also crucial to understand that the consequences go way beyond prison time. A conviction under this law automatically comes with a lifetime requirement to register as a sex offender. That means strict, constant reporting of your address, your job, even your online accounts for the rest of your life.
So that brings us to our next section, where we're going to tackle some of the most common questions that pop up. This is where we get into some of the nuances and potential defenses in these really complex cases.
This is probably the question we hear the most. Is there some kind of exception for teenagers who are close in age? The answer is yes, but it is extremely specific and very limited.
And this slide shows you just how narrow that exception is. For this defense to even apply, a defendant has to prove all 4 of these things. If even one of them isn't met, say the age gap is 2 years and 1 day, the entire defense just fails.
Okay, here's another big one, and it gets back to that knowingly part we talked about. What if you genuinely thought the other person was 18? Can that actually be a defense?
The answer is possibly, but again, it's very limited. This reasonable mistake of age defense only works if the minor was 15 or older, and the burden of proof is on the defendant to show they really couldn't have known. But, and this is the most important part, look at that last point. If the victim was under 15, this defense is completely off the table. It just doesn't apply, period.
This slide lays out a really critical legal deadline, the statute of limitations. For the lower-level felonies, prosecutors have a 7-year window to file charges. But for all of the more serious charges, look at that right column. There is no statute of limitations. That means charges can be filed at any time, even decades after the fact.
All right, let's bring it all home in our final section. We've covered a ton of ground, so what are the most important things you need to remember from all this? If you take anything away from this, let it be these 4 points. 1. The definition of the crime is broad and specific. 2. The victim's age is the single biggest factor in determining the penalty. 3. A conviction means lifetime sex offender registration, period. And 4, and this is a vital legal principle, a minor legally cannot give consent. In the eyes of the law, their consent just doesn't matter.
So we'll end with this question. After walking through the definitions, the severe penalties, and all the legal complexities, what is the single most important step to take if someone is facing these charges? The answer should be crystal clear, and it takes us right back to our opening disclaimer. Navigating a system this complex with stakes this high requires an expert. Thank you for joining us.